When police entered the Carter family home, they expected to find answers. Instead, they found four untouched plates sitting on the dining table. The television was still running, the family car was still parked outside, and a cup of coffee in the kitchen was still warm. But the family, gone. Every single member had disappeared overnight, and what investigators discovered upstairs would make the mystery even more disturbing. Willow Creek Road was the kind of neighborhood where nothing unusual ever happened. Families had lived there for years. Children rode bicycles along the sidewalks during the day, and by midnight most of the street was completely silent. The Carter family had moved into the neighborhood almost 3 years earlier. To everyone around them, they seemed perfectly normal. Mark Carter was a quiet man who worked long hours and rarely attracted attention. His wife Lillian was known for her warm smile and polite conversations with neighbors. Their 16-year-old daughter Emma was a good student who kept mostly to herself, while their youngest son Ben spent most of his time drawing in notebooks he carried everywhere. They were not the kind of family people talked about. They were the kind of family people trusted, which was exactly why what happened that night made no sense. As officers moved through the house, they immediately noticed something strange. Nothing appeared disturbed. The dining room looked as if dinner had ended only moments earlier. Plates remained on the table. Drinking glasses were still half full. A television program continued playing in the background, filling the empty house with distant voices. One officer later described the scene as feeling frozen in time. It was as if the family had suddenly stood up from the table and disappeared. The kitchen showed no signs of panic. The living room showed no signs of a struggle. Every door and every window on the first floor was locked from the inside. As the search continued, officers began checking each room carefully, expecting to find some simple explanation. Instead, the mystery only grew deeper. Emma's bedroom appeared untouched. Books remained on her desk. Her school bag sat near the closet. Nothing suggested she had packed belongings or planned to leave. Ben's room looked much the same. Sketchbooks were scattered across his desk alongside pencils and unfinished drawings. His favorite jacket still hung behind the bedroom door. If the family had decided to leave voluntarily, they had taken almost nothing with them. That wasn't the only thing bothering investigators. The timeline didn't make sense. Neighbors reported hearing strange sounds from the house shortly before emergency services were called. Some described the noise as an animal growl. Others insisted it sounded almost human. One witness even claimed the sound shook the windows. At first, police dismissed those reports as panic or exaggeration. Then they reached the second floor. At the end of a hallway overlooking the backyard, investigators discovered a broken window. Cold night air drifted into the house through shattered glass. For a moment, it seemed they had finally found an answer. Maybe someone had escaped. Maybe an intruder had entered. But the theory fell apart almost immediately. The drop below was too far. Anyone jumping from that height would likely have been seriously injured. More importantly, there were no footprints, no blood, no damaged bushes, no evidence that anyone had used the window at all. The broken glass raised more questions than it answered. As the night continued, police expanded their search beyond the property. Patrol units checked nearby streets. Officers searched wooded areas surrounding the neighborhood. Every possibility was considered. But by sunrise, the result remained the same. No trace of the Carter family. No trace of where they had gone. No clue explaining how an entire family could vanish from a locked house without anyone seeing them leave. For investigators, the case was already becoming one of the strangest disappearances they had ever encountered. But they still didn't know the most important detail. The Carter family had not been alone during the weeks leading up to their disappearance. Someone had been watching them. Someone who appeared outside their house almost every night. And according to several neighbors, that same person had been seen only hours before the family vanished. At first, police believed this mysterious stranger might hold the answers. But what they didn't know was that someone inside the Carter house had already noticed him long before the family disappeared. And that someone was Ben Carter. For nearly 2 months, the same man appeared outside the Carter family home almost every night. Nobody knew his name, nobody knew where he came from, and nobody knew why he was watching the Carter family. But one thing was certain, he wasn't there by accident. At first, nobody paid much attention to him. Willow Creek Road was a quiet neighborhood, and strangers occasionally passed through. But after several weeks, residents began noticing a pattern. The same dark sedan, the same man, the same spot across the street, night after night. Sometimes he arrived shortly after sunset, sometimes close to midnight. But he always came back. Several neighbors later told investigators that the man rarely left his vehicle. He would sit alone for long periods, staring toward the Carter house. On other nights, he stood outside, watching, waiting, never approaching, never knocking, just staring at the house. The behavior made people uncomfortable. One neighbor even considered calling the police, but there was no crime to report. The man wasn't trespassing. He wasn't threatening anyone. He was simply there, watching. As the weeks passed, rumors began spreading throughout the neighborhood. Some believed he was a private investigator. Others thought he was a criminal looking for an opportunity. A few residents became convinced he was planning something far worse. What worried people most was that his attention never seemed to wander. He wasn't interested in any other house. Only the Carter family. Only that house. Only those people. Then things became even stranger. Several witnesses reported seeing the man near places frequently visited by the Carter family. A grocery store, a coffee shop, a gas station. Each sighting happened on different days. Each sighting seemed unrelated. But when investigators later reviewed the reports, one detail stood out. The Carter family had been present every single time. Whether it was coincidence or something more sinister, nobody could say. But by then, many people were already asking the same question. What exactly did this man want from the Carter family? The neighborhood believed the stranger was secretly watching the Carter family. What they didn't know was that someone inside the Carter house had started watching him back. And before long, that person would notice something nobody else had seen. One night, he came and stood outside the house like he always did. But that night was different. Suddenly, he saw something inside the Carter house. A strange voice came from inside. The sound wasn't normal. Lights began flashing throughout the house. Shadows moved across the windows. And at that moment, he decided this was the opportunity he had been waiting for during the last 2 months. He decided to go inside. And then... Emma Carter was very different from most girls her age. At 16 years old, she lived a quiet and isolated life. Every morning she went to school, and every afternoon she returned straight home. She had no close friends, never attended parties, and rarely spoke to anyone outside her family. Unlike most teenagers, Emma didn't use social media and spent most of her free time alone in her room. To everyone around her, Emma seemed shy and introverted. But during the 2 months before the Carter family's disappearance, something about her began to change. Teachers noticed she was becoming distracted in class, her grades started falling, and she no longer seemed interested in anything happening around her. At home, her behavior became even stranger. She spent more time locked inside her bedroom, often keeping the lights turned off for hours. Whenever her parents asked if something was wrong, she always insisted that everything was fine. But Emma knew something was wrong. She knew someone had been following her for weeks, and that person was the Watcher. Emma never told anyone about it and never explained why she suddenly became nervous and withdrawn. Instead, she kept everything to herself and hoped it would eventually stop. It never did. And on the night the Carter family disappeared, when the Watcher finally entered the Carter house, a terrifying roar echoed through the house. The roar came from Emma. The scream was so loud that several neighbors woke up. Some later said their windows actually vibrated. As people stepped outside to see what was happening, they noticed something strange. The Carter house had suddenly gone completely silent. Every light was off. The entire house was dark. Fearing something terrible had happened, someone called the police. As police continued searching for clues inside the Carter house, one officer entered Ben Carter's bedroom. At first, the room appeared ordinary. Pencils, School books and sheets of paper were scattered across the desk. But while checking beneath the bed, the officer discovered a notebook. It looked like a child's diary. Inside were dozens of drawings. Most were simple sketches, but several pages showed the same man over and over again. A tall figure standing outside the Carter house, the same face, the same person. At first, detectives didn't take the drawings seriously. Ben was only 10 years old, and children often draw things they see around them. But everything changed when investigators began speaking with neighbors. Several people reported seeing an unknown man near the Carter house during the previous 2 months. Some had seen him sitting inside a parked car. Others claimed they had seen him standing across the street late at night. The descriptions matched the man in Ben's drawings. Suddenly, the notebook became important evidence. Detectives collected the diary and expanded their investigation. They started reviewing security camera footage from nearby streets and businesses. Before long, they found him. The same man from Ben's drawings. The same man neighbors had described. The same man who had been appearing near the Carter house again and again. Police quickly tracked down his vehicle. Inside, they found photographs of Emma Carter, photographs of the Carter house, and pages filled with notes about the family's daily routine. For investigators, it looked like a clear case of stalking. The Carter family had disappeared, and the mysterious watcher was now the prime suspect. But there was one problem. Nobody knew who the watcher really was. And when police finally found him, the truth would be far more disturbing than anyone expected.
50 miles east. We're missing something crucial.
1 week after the Carter family disappeared, police made a shocking discovery. Deep inside a forest outside town, search teams found a body. The victim had been dead for several days, but investigators could not determine how the person had died. There were no signs of an attack, no obvious injuries, and no explanation for how the victim ended up there. At first, police believed the body might finally provide answers about the Carter family. Instead, it created an even bigger mystery. Days later, forensic testing finally revealed the victim's identity. The body belonged to Ethan Walker, the same mysterious watcher police had spent days searching for. The same man they believed was responsible for the Carter family's disappearance. But everything changed after that discovery, because Ethan was no longer the prime suspect. He was now another victim. As investigators searched through Ethan's belongings, they began uncovering a completely different story. There were no weapons, no evidence connecting him to violence, no evidence that he had kidnapped anyone. Instead, police found notebooks, photographs, and handwritten notes. Most of them were about Emma Carter. At first, detectives believed the notes proved Ethan had been obsessed with her. But as they continued reading, they discovered something strange. Ethan wasn't writing about hurting Emma. He was writing about saving her. For weeks, he had documented unusual things he noticed about the Carter family. Things that didn't make sense, things he couldn't explain. According to Ethan's notes, Emma always seemed frightened, not of him, but of her own family. Then investigators found Ethan's final notebook entry. It had been written only hours before the Carter family disappeared. The message was short. "I know what they are. Tonight I'm going inside." Those were the last words Ethan ever wrote. As the investigation continued, detectives discovered something even more disturbing. Security cameras had captured Ethan following the Carter family on multiple occasions. But when police reviewed the footage frame by frame, something didn't make sense. In many recordings, Ethan could clearly be seen looking directly at the Carter family. Yet the family never appeared on camera. The footage showed Ethan, the streets, the sidewalks, the stores, everything else. But not the Carter family. It was as if they were never there. Investigators then looked deeper into the family's history. What they found was equally disturbing. Very few records existed before the family arrived in town. Very few photographs, very little history, almost nothing. It was as if the Carter family had appeared out of nowhere. Police eventually pieced together what they believed had happened. On the night Ethan entered the Carter house, he believed Emma was in danger. He thought he was going inside to save her. But that night became the last night of Ethan's life. And after that night, the Carter family vanished without a trace. No bodies were ever found, no arrests were ever made, and no one ever saw the Carter family again. The Carter family vanished. Ethan died, and the truth disappeared with them. But if Ethan's final note was correct, then the most dangerous thing in that house that night wasn't the watcher. It was the Carter family.